Sophia Carter dragged her suitcase through the narrow hotel corridor, her heels clicking faintly against the polished floor. The exhaustion in her body weighed her down like a heavy blanket. It had been a grueling day, meetings that stretched for hours, followed by a turbulent flight. All she wanted was to collapse into bed and forget the world existed. She reached her door, fumbling with the keycard. It beeped red. A low groan escaped her lips as she tried again, her trembling hands betraying her frustration. Finally, the lock clicked, and she pushed the door open, stepping into the dimly lit room. The comforting scent of clean linens greeted her as she tossed her bag onto the floor and kicked off her shoes. Without hesitation, she slumped onto the bed, letting out a deep sigh. Her stomach growled audibly, reminding her she hadn't eaten since breakfast. Pushing herself up reluctantly, she made her way to the phone on the bedside table. As she reached for it, a voice cut through the silence, sending ice down her spine. "Took you long enough to come back." Sophia froze, her hand hovering over the phone. Her breath hitched as her eyes darted toward the armchair in the corner of the room. A man sat there, his figure partially obscured by shadows. The dim light from the bedside lamp caught the edges of his sharp jawline and the faint smirk playing on his lips. It was him, Liam Blackwood.
"What the hell are you doing here?"
she demanded, her voice trembling despite her attempt to sound firm. Liam leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. The movement brought his face into the light, revealing his cold, calculating eyes. "You look surprised," he said smoothly, his tone laced with mockery. "Didn't think I'd find you, Sophia." "How did you get in here?" she snapped, taking a cautious step back toward the door. Her heart pounded against her ribs as adrenaline coursed through her veins. Liam chuckled, a deep, unsettling sound that echoed in the quiet room. "You should know by now that there's no place you can hide from me." He gestured toward the small dining table by the window, where a collection of takeout boxes was neatly arranged. "I even ordered dinner for us. Thought you'd be hungry." Her gaze flicked to the food, then back to him. "Get out," she said sharply, her hand inching behind her back to clutch her phone. She wasn't sure if calling for help would work, but she needed to try. "You don't need to do that," Liam said, his voice soft but threatening as he stood. His tall frame loomed over her, his movements slow and deliberate. "I'm not here to hurt you." "Then leave," she countered, trying to keep her voice steady. She backed away further, her fingers tightening around the phone. "I'm calling the police." Liam smirked, his eyes glinting with amusement. "And tell them what?" "That a concerned friend came to check on you." "Come on, Sophia. You and I both know they wouldn't make it here in time." "Don't call yourself my friend," she spat, her voice cracking under the pressure. "You're nothing but a—" "Careful," Liam interrupted, his tone darkening. "You wouldn't want to say something you'll regret." Sophia's eyes darted around the room, searching for anything she could use to defend herself. That's when she spotted it, a knife on the table, likely placed there to cut into the food he'd ordered. Her pulse quickened as she calculated the distance. "What do you want, Liam?" she asked, stalling for time. She shifted her weight subtly, readying herself to move. He tilted his head, studying her with an unsettling intensity.
"What I've always wanted. You?"
The word hung in the air like a storm cloud, suffocating and heavy. Before she could stop herself, Sophia lunged toward the table. Her hand closed around the knife and she spun to face him, the blade trembling in her grip. "Stay back," she warned, her voice firmer now. Liam raised his hands, palms out, a mocking grin spreading across his face. "Fiery as ever, I have to admit, I admire your spirit." He took a step closer, ignoring the knife pointed at his chest. "But let's not do something we'll both regret." "Don't come any closer," she shouted, the knife shaking in her grasp. Her breath came in shallow gasps, and her heart felt like it might burst. "You're holding it all wrong," Liam said casually, as if he were offering advice on a cooking show. "What if you slip and hurt yourself? And that wouldn't be good, especially in your condition." Sophia's stomach turned as his gaze dropped pointedly to her midsection. Her free hand instinctively rested on her growing belly, as if shielding the life inside her from his gaze. "Don't you dare bring my child into this," she hissed. "Your child?" Liam echoed, feigning surprise. "Isn't it our child, Sophia? Or have you forgotten how this all started?" "Don't twist this," she snapped, tears stinging her eyes. "You have no claim to me or my baby." Liam's smirk faltered for the first time, replaced by a flicker of something darker. "We'll see about that." He moved faster than she anticipated. Before she could react, his hand shot out, grabbing her wrist and twisting it just enough to make her drop the knife. It clattered to the floor as he kicked it out of reach. Sophia gasped, stumbling back, but he didn't let go. His grip was like iron. "Let me go," she demanded, struggling against him. "Not until we have a little chat," he replied, his voice dangerously calm. He released her wrist, only to back her against the wall. "You've been avoiding me, Sophia, running from me, but that ends now." She glared up at him, her fear morphing into defiance. "Hey! You're insane, if you think I'll ever let you control me." "Insane," Liam repeated, his lips curling into a sinister smile.
No, darling, I'm determined. There's a difference.
Sophia's mind raced as she tried to think of a way out. She considered screaming for help, but the walls of the hotel were thick, and there was no guarantee anyone would hear her. Instead, she squared her shoulders, summoning every ounce of courage she had left. "If you don't leave," she said, her voice steady, despite the tears threatening to spill, "I'll make sure you regret it." Liam laughed, the sound low and chilling. "Oh, Sophia," he said, leaning in so close she could feel his breath on her skin. "You have no idea what regret feels like, but you're about to learn." The tension in the room was shattered by a sudden knock on the door. Both of them froze, their eyes locking. The knock came again, louder this time. "Sophia, are you in there?" a voice called from the other side. It was Maya Langford, her best friend. Relief flooded Sophia's chest, but it was short-lived. Liam's expression darkened, his jaw tightening as he glanced at the door. "Looks like we'll have to cut this conversation short," he said, stepping back. His lips curled into a cruel smile as he added, "For now." Sophia didn't wait for him to change his mind. She darted toward the door, throwing it open to find Maya standing there, concern etched across her face. "Sophia, are you okay?" Liam brushed past them without a word, his presence like a shadow lingering even after he was gone. Sophia's knees buckled and she collapsed into Maya's arms, the weight of what had just happened finally crashing down on her. "What the hell was that?" Maya demanded, pulling Sophia into the room and closing the door. Sophia's voice trembled as she whispered, "It was Liam." Sophia slumped onto the edge of the bed, her head buried in her hands as she struggled to steady her breathing. The room felt suffocating, even with Maya by her side. Her mind replayed every moment of the confrontation with Liam, his calm yet menacing presence lingering like a dark shadow. "Sophia," Maya said softly, sitting beside her. "What happened? Why was he here? And why do you look like you've seen a ghost?" Sophia hesitated, glancing toward the door as if expecting Liam to barge back in. "He just showed up," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He said he knew where Elliot is." Or, she paused, her chest tightening, "he made it sound like he does?" Maya's eyes widened in alarm. "You think he's involved in Elliot's disappearance?" Sophia nodded. I don't just think it, Maya. I know it. He admitted as much, without actually saying the words. And now he's trying to use Elliot to manipulate me. He wants me to. Maya reached out and gripped Sophia's arm firmly. You're not going anywhere with him. He's dangerous, Sophia. You need to call the police. Sophia shook her head vehemently. I tried, Maya. He's too confident, too prepared. It's like he already knows every move I'm gonna make. And if I push too hard, he might. Her voice broke as she cradled her stomach protectively. Maya glanced down, her expression softening as realization dawned. This is about the baby, isn't it? Sophia didn't answer, but the look in her eyes was enough. Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed on the bedside table. She reached for it, her heart pounding, and checked the caller ID. It wasn't a number she recognized, but something told her to answer. Hello, she said cautiously. The voice on the other end was faint and strained. Maya. Mia's jaw dropped and she nearly dropped the phone in shock. Elliot! Oh my God, where are you? Are you okay? Sophia's head snapped up, her eyes wide with hope and disbelief. What? Is it him? She mouthed, and Maya nodded. I don't have much time, Elliot continued, his voice weak. I'm being held in some kind of basement. It's dark, cold. I think it's one of Liam's properties. He's keeping me here. Maya's throat tightened as she exchanged a panicked glance with Sophia. We'll get you out, she promised. Just hold on. Do you know where you are? No, Elliot rasped, but there's someone helping me. A guard. Daniel. He's trying to get me out. Sophia grabbed the phone from Maya, her voice breaking with emotion. Elliot, it's me. I'm here. Are you okay? Please tell me you're okay. Sophia. Elliot's voice softened, and for a brief moment, she could hear his relief. I'm alive. Barely. But I'll be okay, as long as I know you're safe. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched the phone tightly. I'm not safe, Elliot. Liam's after me. He's trying to use you to control me. I don't know what to do. Listen to me, Elliot said, his tone urgent despite his weakness. You need to stay away from him. Don't let him take you, Sophia. Whatever he's planning, it's not just about you. It's about the baby. A loud crash echoed through the phone, followed by muffled shouts. Elliot's voice turned frantic. I have to go. Daniel's here. We're making our move. Stay strong, Sophia. I'll find you. The line went dead, leaving Sophia staring at the phone in stunned silence. Maya touched her shoulder gently. We need to call someone, the police, a private investigator, anyone who can track him down. Sophia wiped her tears away, her expression hardening. We can't rely on anyone else. Liam's too powerful. If Elliot is getting out, I need to make sure I'm ready for what comes next. He'll come after me, Maya. He won't stop. Maya frowned. Then what do we do? Sophia's mind raced. She thought of the knife Liam had disarmed her of earlier, the way he'd cornered her so easily. She couldn't let herself be that vulnerable again. I need to outsmart him, she said finally. If Liam thinks he's in control, we'll use that to our advantage. Meanwhile, in the damp basement, Elliot leaned heavily on Daniel as they navigated the narrow corridors. His body screamed in protest with every step, but he gritted his teeth and pushed forward. He couldn't let Sophia down, not after everything she'd endured. You sure about this plan? Elliot asked, his voice low. Daniel nodded, his expression determined. We don't have another choice. The guards are distracted upstairs. If we move fast, we can slip out through the garage. Elliot glanced at the gun holstered at Daniel's side.
And if we run into trouble?
Daniel smirked. Then we deal with it. Quietly. They reached a staircase leading up to the main level. Daniel motioned for Elliot to stay close as he eased the door open, peering into the hallway. It was empty, but the distant hum of voices indicated they weren't alone. "Stay low and follow me," Daniel whispered. Elliot nodded, his heart pounding as they crept through the dimly lit halls. Every creak of the floorboards felt deafening, every shadow a potential threat. They rounded a corner, only to freeze as two guards appeared ahead of them. Daniel reacted instantly, pulling Elliot into an alcove. "What now?" Elliot whispered, his breath shallow. Daniel pulled his gun, checking the chamber. "We take them out." Elliot's eyes widened. "You're kidding, right? We can't just—" "We don't have time to argue," Daniel cut him off. "Stay here." Before Elliot could protest, Daniel stepped out, his movements swift and precise. In the span of seconds, he subdued one guard with a sharp blow to the head and disarmed the other. "Let's go," Daniel hissed, motioning for Elliot to follow. They continued toward the garage, adrenaline fueling their every step. But just as they reached the heavy steel doors, an alarm blared, flooding the halls with red light. "Damn it!" Daniel cursed, shoving the doors open. Elliot staggered into the garage, his chest heaving as he scanned the space. It was vast, filled with luxury cars, but no clear exits. "This way," Daniel shouted, leading him to a sleek black SUV. The sound of boots pounding against the concrete grew louder, and Elliot turned to see a group of guards storming into the garage. "We're out of time," Daniel said, starting the engine. "Get in." Elliot barely managed to climb into the passenger seat before the SUV roared to life. Daniel slammed his foot on the gas, tearing through the garage and out onto a winding dirt road. Bullets pinged against the rear of the vehicle as the guards fired after them, but Daniel maneuvered expertly, putting distance between them and their pursuers. Elliot leaned back in his seat, his head spinning. "Sophia," he murmured, clutching the locket around his neck. "I'm coming back to you." Back at the hotel, Sophia paced the room, her anxiety mounting. Every second felt like an eternity as she waited for news, for some sign that Elliot was safe. Maya watched her silently, her own worry etched across her face. "Sophia," she said gently, "you can't keep doing this to yourself. You need to rest." "I can't rest," Sophia snapped. "Not when he's out there. Not when Liam's planning God knows what." Before Maya could respond, there was another knock at the door. Both women froze, their eyes locking. Sophia approached the door cautiously, her hand trembling as she reached for the handle. "Who is it?" she called out. A familiar voice answered, "It's me." Sophia's heart stopped. It was Liam. She turned to Maya, her face pale. "Get out," she whispered. "Go out the back, now." "What about you?" Maya hissed. "Just go," Sophia insisted, shoving her toward the adjoining door. Maya hesitated but nodded, slipping out quietly. Sophia took a deep breath and opened the door. Liam stood there, his smile as cold as ever. "Miss me?" he asked, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Sophia clenched her fists, her jaw tightening. He closed the door behind him, his smile widening. The game had only just begun. Sophia stood frozen as Liam stepped further into the room, his piercing gaze locking onto her. The door clicked shut behind him, the sound echoing ominously in the quiet space. "You look tense," Liam remarked, his voice smooth, almost casual, as though he weren't the cause of the storm raging inside her. "You really should relax. Stress isn't good for the baby." Sophia's fists clenched at her sides. "What do you want, Liam? Why can't you just leave me alone?" Liam tilted his head, a mock expression of hurt crossing his face. "Leave you alone? Oh, Sophia, I thought we were past this game. I've been nothing but clear about my intentions." She didn't respond, her silence a shield against his manipulative words. Liam smirked, clearly enjoying her defiance. He paced the room, his movements deliberate, like a predator toying with its prey. "I thought you'd appreciate my generosity," he continued, gesturing grandly. "I came to offer you a chance to finally see Elliot again." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Liam's grin widened.
"Oh, you heard me. I know where he is. And if you'd just stop fighting me, I might be persuaded to tell you."
Her stomach twisted. She wanted to scream at him, to demand answers, but she knew that would only play into his hands. Instead, she forced herself to meet his gaze. "You expect me to believe you?" she said, her tone icy. "After everything you've done? After everything you've taken from me?" Liam chuckled, clearly amused by her defiance. "Believe what you want? But if you want Elliot back, you'll need me." Sophia's breath hitched, her mind racing. She couldn't trust him. She knew that much. But if there was even the slightest chance he was telling the truth, could she afford not to take it? Before she could respond, Liam's phone buzzed. "Think about my offer," he said, his voice low and threatening. The door closed behind him, leaving Sophia alone in the suffocating silence. Her knees buckled, and she sank onto the edge of the bed, her mind a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. Meanwhile, the SUV sped down the dirt road, the roar of the engine almost drowning out the sound of bullets ricocheting off the vehicle's frame. Daniel's knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Hang on!" he shouted, swerving to avoid a fallen tree branch. The sharp turn threw Elliot against the door, pain shooting through his injured ribs. "We're not going to outrun them," Elliot said through gritted teeth, glancing back at the pursuing vehicles. "They're too close." Daniel didn't respond, his jaw set in determination. He veered sharply onto a narrow side road, the tires kicking up dirt and gravel. The pursuing cars struggled to keep up, the uneven terrain slowing them down. "Where does this road lead?" Elliot asked, clutching his side. "Out of here," Daniel replied curtly. Elliot glanced at him, his skepticism clear. "And if we're not?" Daniel allowed himself a faint smirk. "Then we improvise." The road ahead opened into a clearing, revealing an abandoned storage facility. Daniel skidded the SUV to a stop behind one of the large buildings, cutting the engine. "We'll lose them on foot," he said, unbuckling his seatbelt. "Let's go." Elliot hesitated, his body screaming in protest, but he knew there was no other option. He followed Daniel out of the vehicle, the two men moving quickly toward the shadows of the facility. The sound of engines grew louder as the pursuing cars entered the clearing. Elliot pressed himself against the wall of the building, his breath shallow. "Stay quiet," Daniel whispered, peering around the corner. "They'll spread out to search the area. That's our chance." Elliot nodded, his heart pounding as he listened to the muffled voices of their pursuers. Every step felt like a gamble, every breath a risk. Back at Liam's mansion, Sophia paced the room, her mind racing. She couldn't sit idle, not while Elliot's life hung in the balance. She needed answers. Needed answers. Needed to find a way to turn the tables on Liam. Her eyes fell on his phone, which he'd carelessly left on the table during their earlier confrontation. She hesitated, her instinct screaming that it was a trap. But the thought of Elliot alone and in danger pushed her forward. She picked up the phone, her fingers trembling as she navigated through it. Unsurprisingly, it was locked with a passcode. Frustrated, she set it down and looked around the room, searching for anything that might give her a clue. That's when she noticed it, a small folder partially hidden under a stack of papers. She pulled it out, her heart racing as she flipped it open. Inside were photos, documents, and handwritten notes. Her stomach turned as she realized what she was looking at. It was a dossier on her, every detail of her life meticulously documented, and alongside it were notes about Elliot, his routines, his habits. Liam had been planning this for months, maybe even years. The realization sent a cold chill down her spine. She flipped through the pages, her hands shaking. One of the notes caught her eye, a set of coordinates scribbled hastily in the margin. Could this be where Liam was keeping Elliot? Before she could dwell on it further, the sound of approaching footsteps jolted her back to reality. She quickly slid the folder back into place, her heart racing as she grabbed a random book from the table and pretended to read. The door opened, and Liam stepped inside, his expression unreadable. "Keeping yourself entertained?" he asked, his tone light but with an edge of suspicion. Sophia forced a casual smile, trying to, at least. Liam's lips curved into a faint smirk, but his eyes lingered on her for a moment too long. She held her breath, praying he hadn't noticed anything out of place. "I'll see what I can do about that," he said, picking up his phone. "But for now, get some rest. You're gonna need your strength." Before she could respond, he turned and left, the door locking behind him. Sophia exhaled shakily, her mind racing. At the storage facility, Elliot and Daniel crept through the shadows, their movements slow and deliberate. The voices of the guards echoed faintly, growing closer with every passing second. "They're fanning out," Daniel whispered. "We need to move now." Elliot nodded, his body screaming in protest as he pushed himself forward. They made their way to a side door, the rusted metal groaning softly as Daniel eased it open. The cool night air hit Elliot's face as they stepped outside. Relief flooded him, but it was short-lived. A shout rang out behind them, followed by the sound of boots pounding against the ground. "Run!" Daniel barked, pulling Elliot forward. They sprinted toward the tree line, the guards hot on their heels. Elliot's lungs burned, his vision blurring, but he forced himself to keep moving. Gunshots cracked through the air, the bullets whizzing past them. Daniel returned fire, his aim precise, but the guards were relentless. They reached the edge of the forest, the dense foliage providing some cover. Daniel pulled Elliot behind a tree, reloading his weapon. "We can't keep this up," Elliot gasped, his body on the verge of collapse. Daniel glanced at him, his expression grim. Another gunshot rang out, splintering the tree beside them. Elliot flinched, his heart hammering in his chest. "We have to split up," Daniel said suddenly. "It's the only way. I'll draw them away, give you a chance to get out." "No," Elliot protested, grabbing his arm. "I'm not leaving you." Daniel shook his head. "You have to. Get to the safe house. Find Sophia. I'll meet you there." Elliot hesitated, his heart torn. But before he could respond, Daniel shoved him forward. "Go!" he shouted, stepping into the open and firing at their pursuers. Elliot ran, his mind racing as he disappeared into the shadows of the forest. Behind him, the sound of gunfire and shouting faded into the distance. He didn't stop until his legs gave out, collapsing onto the forest floor. His body ached, his lungs burned, but one thought kept him going. Sophia. He had to find her, no matter what. Sophia sat alone in the room, her mind swirling with the weight of her discoveries. The dossier she'd found earlier haunted her. Pages of her life dissected and reduced to cold facts, all while Liam had manipulated her into thinking he was acting on impulse. She stared at the window, the night pressing heavily against the glass, as her thoughts churned. What was his endgame, and what would he do if he discovered she'd seen the coordinates? She clenched her fists, her nails biting into her palms as the helplessness threatened to consume her. She couldn't afford to falter. Elliot was out there somewhere, and she wasn't going to let Liam win. The sound of the lock turning startled her. She stiffened as Liam entered, a smug expression plastered across his face. He carried 2 glasses of wine, setting one down on the table near her. "I thought we could talk," he said smoothly, sitting down across from her. "I have nothing to say to you," Sophia replied coldly, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Liam chuckled, swirling the wine in his glass. "Come now, Sophia. We both know you have plenty of questions. Let me guess, you found something while I was gone. Perhaps something while I was gone. Perhaps something—" Sophia froze, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Did he know? He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Her jaw tightened, and she forced herself to meet his gaze. "You've been spying on me for years, haven't you? Tracking every detail of my life, planning this sick game." Liam smiled, a sinister gleam in his eyes. "It's not a game, Sophia. It's strategy. And it's nothing personal." "Well," he paused, his smirk deepening, "maybe a little personal. You and Elliot made it necessary." Sophia's stomach churned at the mention of Elliot.
What do you mean necessary?
Liam leaned back, sipping his wine leisurely. "Elliot thought he could outmaneuver me. Foolish, really. He had something I wanted, and he refused to play fair. So, I decided to change the rules." Her breath hitched. "What did you do to him?" Liam's smile widened, his expression almost gleeful. "Nothing permanent. Yet. He's alive, if that's what you're asking. For now." Sophia's hands gripped the arms of the chair, her nails digging into the fabric. "You're a monster," she spat. "Maybe," Liam said with a shrug, "but I'm a monster who gets results, and you, Sophia, are part of those results." Her defiance flared. "You'll never control me, no matter what you do." Liam stood, his towering frame casting a shadow over her. "Control isn't my goal. You're too strong for that. What I want, Sophia, is for you to choose me, to see that I'm the better option." She laughed bitterly, rising to her feet. "The better option? You think trapping me here, threatening Elliot, and endangering my child will make me choose you?" His calm exterior cracked for the briefest moment, his jaw tightening. "You'll see soon enough. Elliot isn't coming back for you. He can't." Sophia's chest tightened, but she refused to let him see her fear. "You're lying. He'll come back, and when he does, you'll regret everything you've done." Liam's smirk returned, but this time it carried a dangerous edge. "We'll see." He turned and strode toward the door, pausing just before stepping out. "Rest well, Sophia. You'll need your strength for what's to come." The door clicked shut behind him, the sound of the lock sliding into place like a nail in her coffin. Sophia sank back into the chair, her hands trembling. Liam's words echoed in her mind, feeding her dread. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Elliot stumbled through the darkness. His breath labored and his body battered. The faint light of dawn began to creep through the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor. He clutched his side, the pain in his ribs worsening with every step. His thoughts raced, Liam's twisted words playing over and over in his head. He'd underestimated the lengths Liam would go to, and now Sophia was paying the price. "Just a little further," he muttered to himself, his voice hoarse. He had to keep moving, had to find a way to reach Sophia before it was too late. As he pushed through the underbrush, he spotted a faint glimmer of light in the distance. His heart leapt. Could it be a safe house, or was it another trap? He approached cautiously, every instinct on high alert. The light came from a small cabin nestled in the trees, its windows glowing faintly. He crept closer, peering through the window. Inside, he saw a lone figure. Daniel, slumped over a table, his shoulder bandaged and bloodied. Relief flooded Elliot as he knocked softly on the door. Daniel's head shot up, his hand moving instinctively to the gun at his side. When he saw Elliot, his tense expression softened. "You made it," Daniel said, opening the door and pulling him inside. "Barely," Elliot replied, collapsing into a chair. "What about you?" Daniel shrugged, wincing as the movement aggravated his injury. "Took a hit during the escape, but I'll live. More importantly, we're off their radar for now." Elliot leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. "We have to go back. Liam has Sophia. I can't leave her there." Daniel sighed, sitting across from him. "Elliot, you're in no condition to fight him right now. And neither am I." "I don't care," Elliot said fiercely. "She's all that matters. I'll do whatever it takes to get her back." Daniel studied him for a long moment before nodding. "All right." Elliot nodded, determination hardening his resolve. "Then let's figure it out. We don't have much time." Back at the mansion, Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the folded piece of paper in her hand. She'd managed to sneak it from Liam's folder when he wasn't looking. The coordinates. It was her only lead, her only chance to find Elliot. But escaping the mansion was another matter entirely. Liam had guards stationed at every entrance, and the windows were reinforced. Her mind raced as she tried to piece together a plan. She needed a distraction, something that would draw the guards away long enough for her to slip out. Her gaze fell on the small lamp by the bedside table. An idea began to form, dangerous and desperate, but it was all she had. She grabbed the lamp, unscrewing the bulb and exposing the wires inside. Working quickly, she fashioned a crude spark using the wiring and set it near the heavy curtains. Stepping back, she held her breath as the fabric caught fire, flames licking upward. Smoke began to fill the room, triggering the alarm system. The sound of the alarm echoed through the mansion, followed by the panicked shouts of guards. Sophia seized the moment, slipping out of the room and into the chaos. She moved swiftly, keeping to the shadows as she made her way toward the side exit. Her heart pounded with every step, her fear of being caught fueling her determination. As she reached the door, a voice called out behind her. "Going somewhere, Sophia?"
She turned, her blood running cold as Liam stepped out of the smoke, his expression unreadable.
"I should have known you'd try something like this," he said, his tone almost amused. Sophia squared her shoulders, meeting his gaze with defiance. "You can't keep me here, Liam. I'll never stop fighting you." His smirk returned, but this time it was laced with menace. "Oh, Sophia, you've only just begun to see what I'm capable of." Before she could react, he grabbed her arm, his grip unrelenting as he pulled her back into the mansion.
Sophia's mind screamed in protest, but she forced herself to stay calm. The game wasn't over yet, not by a long shot.
Sophia's pulse thundered in her ears as Liam's iron grip dragged her back through the smoke-filled corridor. The fire she had started was spreading rapidly, with flames licking the walls and thick smoke clouding her vision. Shouts from his guards echoed around them, some barking orders while others scrambled to extinguish the growing blaze. "Let me go!" Sophia yelled, twisting her arm in a desperate attempt to free herself. Liam didn't even flinch, his jaw tight as he pulled her deeper into the mansion. "You really thought you could outsmart me, didn't you?" Liam hissed, his calm veneer cracking to reveal the fury simmering beneath. "You think a little fire is going to stop me? Do you even know who you're dealing with?" Sophia stumbled as he yanked her toward a stairwell. Panic surged through her veins. She couldn't go back to her prison, not now, not after coming so close to freedom. Gritting her teeth, she planted her feet and threw her weight backward, using all her strength to resist him. Liam stopped, turning to face her with a look of pure menace.
"You're testing my patience, Sophia."
"And you're testing my limits," she shot back. Fire burning in her voice, despite the fear clawing at her throat. "I'm not your prisoner, and I'm not your pawn." His lips curled into a dark smile. "Oh, but you are. You just haven't accepted it yet." She glanced around desperately, searching for anything she could use against him. Her eyes landed on a large decorative vase perched on a side table near the stairwell. Without thinking, she grabbed it with both hands and swung it at Liam with all her might. The vase shattered against his shoulder, sending shards of porcelain flying. Liam staggered, his grip on her arm loosening just enough for her to slip free. Adrenaline fueled her as she bolted down the hall, her bare feet slapping against the marble floor. "Get her!" Liam roared, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Sophia sprinted toward the back of the mansion, her lungs burning as she pushed herself to move faster. She could hear the pounding of boots behind her, the guards closing in. Her mind raced, every step a gamble as she navigated the labyrinthine hallways.
She needed to find a way out, needed to put as much distance between herself and Liam as possible.
She turned a corner and came face to face with two guards blocking her path. Their expressions shifted from surprise to cold determination as they raised their weapons. Sophia skidded to a halt, her heart plummeting. Thinking fast, she grabbed a heavy candlestick from a nearby table and swung it in a wide arc. The metal collided with one guard's wrist, sending his weapon clattering to the floor. She didn't wait for him to recover, using the moment of confusion to dart past them and continue her escape. The heat from the fire was growing unbearable, the smoke making it harder to breathe. Sophia coughed violently, her vision blurring as she stumbled through the haze. She felt like a rat trapped in a maze. Every turn leading her closer to capture. Finally, she spotted a door at the end of the hallway, a large double door that led to the gardens. Her chest tightened with hope as she barreled toward it, ignoring the shouts and footsteps behind her. She reached the door and threw it open, the cool night air hitting her like a shock. For a brief moment, relief washed over her. She was outside. But the feeling was short-lived. Liam emerged from the smoke, his silhouette towering and menacing as he stepped into the doorway. His shirt was torn, his face smeared with soot, but his eyes burned with fury. "Sophia," he said, his voice dangerously low. "You've made this much harder than it needed to be." She backed away, her bare feet sinking into the damp grass. Liam advanced slowly, his movements deliberate and predatory. "Do you have any idea how much chaos you've caused tonight? How much damage you've done?" He gestured behind him, where flames still flickered inside the mansion. "And for what? Did you really think you'd make it out alive?" Sophia's eyes darted around the garden, searching for anything she could use to defend herself. Her gaze landed on a gardening spade propped against a nearby flower bed. Without hesitation, she lunged for it, gripping the wooden handle tightly as she turned to face him. "Try me," she said, raising the spade like a weapon. Liam laughed, a cold, mocking sound. "You're brave, I'll give you that." "Neither will underestimating me," she shot back, the spade trembling slightly in her hands. The tension crackled between them like a live wire. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, in a blur of motion, Liam lunged at her. Sophia swung the spade, but he anticipated the move, grabbing the handle and wrenching it from her grasp. She stumbled backward, losing her balance and falling to the ground. Liam loomed over her, his chest heaving. "You're done running, Sophia," he growled. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. "I'll never stop." Before Liam could respond, the distant sound of sirens pierced the night. His head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. Sophia's heart leapt. Someone had called for help. The sirens grew louder, accompanied by the flash of red and blue lights in the distance. Liam cursed under his breath, his grip on control slipping. "This isn't over," he said, his voice filled with venom, "not by a long shot." He turned and disappeared into the shadows, his retreat as sudden as his arrival. Sophia lay on the ground, her body trembling as the adrenaline began to fade. The sirens drew closer, and she felt a wave of relief wash over her. She was safe, for now. But as she stared into the darkness where Liam had vanished, a chilling realization settled over her. He wasn't giving up. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The night air roared past Sophia as she clung to the inside of the car, her fingers digging into the armrests. The black SUV swerved sharply, the tires screeching, as Daniel jerked the wheel to avoid another oncoming vehicle. In the rearview mirror, a convoy of Liam's men trailed close behind, headlights piercing the darkness like predators' eyes. "They're gaining on us," Sophia shouted over the chaos, her voice edged with panic. Daniel didn't take his eyes off the road, his expression steely. "Not for long," he muttered, slamming his foot on the accelerator. The engine roared in response. The SUV lurching forward as it sped down the winding backroads. Sophia turned in her seat to glance at the vehicles chasing them. The lead car was dangerously close, the gleam of a rifle muzzle visible through the driver's window. A shot rang out, the bullet striking the rear bumper with a metallic clang. She flinched, her heart pounding. "We need to lose them," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm working on it," Daniel snapped, spinning the wheel hard to the left. The SUV veered off the main road, crashing through a thicket of trees and onto a dirt trail. Branches scraped against the windows, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. The pursuing cars hesitated momentarily before following, their headlights bouncing wildly over the uneven terrain. Sophia gripped the edge of her seat as the vehicle jolted over rocks and potholes. Her mind raced, each bump reminding her of the precariousness of their escape. "Where does this road lead?" she asked, trying to steady her voice. Daniel didn't answer immediately, his focus entirely on the trail ahead. Finally, he said, "There's a bridge about a mile from here. If we can make it across, we might be able to cut through the forest and lose them." "Might?" Sophia echoed, her stomach twisting at the uncertainty in his voice. "Just trust me," Daniel said firmly. The trail narrowed, the trees closing in on either side like towering walls. The SUV bounced violently as it hit a particularly deep rut, sending Sophia jolting upward in her seat. Behind them, the convoy of cars navigated the rough terrain with practiced precision, their drivers relentless in their pursuit. One of the vehicles surged ahead, pulling up alongside the SUV. Sophia's breath caught as she saw a masked figure lean out of the window, a pistol in hand. The man took aim, his weapon trained on Daniel. "Duck!" Daniel barked, shoving her head down just as a shot shattered the driver's side window. Glass rained down, sparkling like deadly shards in the dim light. Daniel gritted his teeth and swerved hard to the right, slamming the SUV into the side of the other car. The impact sent the masked man tumbling out of the window, his scream lost in the cacophony of crashing metal. The enemy car spun out, careening into a tree with a deafening crunch. Sophia glanced up just in time to see the wreckage disappearing behind them. Relief surged through her, but it was short-lived. There were still 2 cars on their tail. Another burst of gunfire erupted, the bullets ripping through the rear window. Sophia shielded her face as shards of glass flew past her. "This isn't working," she shouted, her voice raw with fear. Daniel's jaw tightened. "We're almost there. Hold on." The dirt trail opened up abruptly, revealing a rickety wooden bridge spanning a rushing river below. The water gleamed silver in the moonlight, its roar echoing in the stillness of the night. Daniel floored the gas pedal, the SUV hurtling toward the bridge at breakneck speed. Sophia's stomach lurched as they hit the wooden planks, the entire bridge groaning under the weight of the vehicle. The planks rattled and shook, the gaps between them revealing flashes of the swirling water far below. Behind them, The pursuing cars didn't hesitate, barreling onto the bridge in a thunderous cacophony. "Faster," Sophia urged, her eyes darting nervously to the side. "View mirror." Daniel didn't respond, his hands gripping the wheel tightly as they raced across. The bridge trembled violently, a testament to its fragility under the strain of 3 speeding vehicles. Just as they neared the halfway point, one of the cars behind them swerved erratically, its front tire catching on a loose plank. The vehicle spun out of control, crashing through the side railing and plunging into the river below. A burst of water shot up, and then it was gone. The remaining car pressed on, its driver relentless. As the SUV reached the end of the bridge, Daniel yanked the wheel sharply, sending the vehicle skidding onto solid ground. He slammed on the brakes, throwing the car into a sharp turn that left them facing the bridge's exit. Sophia barely had time to process what was happening before Daniel grabbed the rifle from the back seat. "Stay in the car," he barked, throwing the door open and stepping out.
"Daniel, wait!"
Sophia called, but he was already moving. The last pursuing car roared off the bridge, its headlights blazing as it sped toward them. Daniel raised the rifle, taking aim. The first shot rang out, piercing the windshield. The second struck the front tire, sending the car careening sideways. It skidded to a halt just feet from the SUV, smoke billowing from its engine. The driver stumbled out, coughing and disoriented, but Daniel was faster. He leveled the rifle at the man, his voice cold and commanding. "Drop it, now." The driver hesitated, his hand hovering near his weapon. Daniel took a step forward, his gaze unyielding. "I won't ask again." The man dropped his gun, raising his hands in surrender. Daniel kept his aim steady as he motioned toward the forest. "Run. And don't look back." The man didn't need to be told twice. He took off into the trees, disappearing into the shadows. Daniel lowered the rifle and turned back to the SUV. Sophia was already out of the car, her eyes wide with concern as she ran toward him. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," he said gruffly, though the tension in his voice betrayed his exhaustion. "We need to keep moving." Sophia nodded, her resolve hardening. "Where do we go now?" Daniel glanced at the wreckage behind them, his expression grim. "There's a clearing about half a mile from here. If we can get there, we'll have a better vantage point, but we can't stay long. Liam will send more men." Sophia's stomach knotted at the mention of Liam. "He won't stop, will he?" "No," Daniel said simply. "Not until he gets what he wants." They climbed back into the SUV, the tension between them thick as the reality of their situation sank in. The vehicle rumbled to life, its damaged frame groaning as Daniel guided it back onto the dirt road. Sophia stared out the window, her thoughts a whirlwind of fear and determination. She didn't know how much longer they could keep running, but one thing was certain. Liam wouldn't give up, and neither would she. The chase wasn't over, it was only beginning. Thank you so much for staying until the very end of this gripping journey. Your time and attention mean the world to us. Stories like this remind us of the strength of the human spirit, the unyielding determination to protect those we love, and the resilience we can summon, even in the face of overwhelming danger. Sophia's story teaches us that no matter how dark or desperate a situation may seem, courage and hope can pave the way to... What about you? Where are you tuning in from? We'd love to know. Drop your location in the comments below and share your thoughts about the story. Did it inspire you? Did it inspire you? Did you see a part of yourself in Sophia's fight or Daniel's loyalty? We'd love to hear your reflections. If you enjoyed this video and want to experience more thrilling stories, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. We have so much more in store for you. Stories that will captivate, inspire, and leave you on the edge of your seat. Until next time, thank you for being part of our journey